On the 25th of August, 1939, a German battleship steamed into the harbor of Danzig, a city that belonged to no country. Officially, this was a courtesy visit honoring sailors killed in the First World War. Below decks, out of sight, waited more than 200 German assault troops. To understand why this ship came, you have to go back 5 months. Danzig was a creation of the last peace. In 1919, the Treaty of Versailles took the old Baltic port from defeated Germany and made it a free city under the League of Nations. 400,000 people, the great majority of them German. But its customs, its railways, and its foreign relations belonged to the new Polish state next door. And to give Poland a path to the sea, the treaty cut a corridor of Polish territory through to the coast, leaving German East Prussia cut off from the right. On paper, Danzig was a democracy under international protection. On the ground, it had already been captured once from the inside. When Hitler took power in Germany in 1933, Danzig's own Nazi party won control of the city parliament. And from then on, the Free City took its orders from Berlin. The League's commissioner tried to protect Danzig's Jews and was forced out. Opposition parties were broken up. The elections due in 1939 were simply canceled. That spring, wrecking crews began pulling down the city's great synagogue. Most of Danzig's Jews had already fled. So when Berlin demanded that Danzig come home to the Reich, it was demanding a city its own party already ran. Germany named its price. In October 1938, returned Danzig to the Reich and let Germany build a sealed motorway and railway across the corridor. Warsaw refused and kept refusing. When the demand was pressed again that March, days after German troops entered Prague, Poland's foreign minister, Joseph Beck, put a question to the German ambassador. Did Germany intend to negotiate at the point of a bayonet? Britain answered first. On the 31st of March, Chamberlain promised that if Poland's independence were threatened, Britain would fight. This is his statement from that day.
If an attempt were made to change the situation by force in such a way as to threaten Polish independence, why then that would inevitably start a general conflagration in which this country would be involved.
Hitler's answer came in secret. 3 days later, a directive to the armed forces, codenamed Case White. The army was to be ready to move against Poland, quote, at any time from the 1st of September, 1939 onwards. The war had a date before it had a cause. On the 28th of April, Hitler went before the Reichstag and the cameras. He tore up the naval agreement with Britain and the 10-year pact with Poland. And on Danzig, this was his claim, his own voice.
Früher oder später ganz natürlich gelöst werden musste. Die Frage der deutschen Stadt Danzig. Danzig ist eine deutsche Stadt und will zu Deutschland. Umgekehrt hat diese Stadt vertragliche Abmachungen, die allerdings aufgezwungen waren durch die Versailler Friedensdiktatoren mit Polen.
In the same speech, he answered President Roosevelt's appeal for peace by reading out, one by one, the list of countries America wanted him to leave alone, while the chamber roared with laughter.
Und er nennt als staffelfrei kommend nun Finnland, Lettland, Litauen, Estland, Norwegen, Schweden, Dänemark, Niederlande, Belgien, Großbritannien, Irland, Frankreich, Portugal, Spanien, die Schweiz, Liechtenstein, Luxemburg, Polen, Ungarn, Rumänien, Jugoslawien, Russland, Bulgarien, Türkei, Irak, Arabien, Syrien, Palästina, Ägypten.
Warsaw replied 1 week later in Parliament through Joseph Beck. 2 of his sentences became famous. The first, we in Poland do not know the concept of peace at any price.
My w Polsce nie znamy pojęcia pokoju za wszelką cenę.
And then the sentence every Pole would remember.
Jest jedna tylko rzecz w życiu ludzi, narodów i państw, która jest bezcenna. Tą rzeczą jest honor.
Honor, Beck said, is the one thing in the life of men, of nations, and of states that has no price. Not everyone agreed. In Paris, a prominent politician published an article whose title asked the question aloud, "Why die for Danzig?" Hitler was counting on the West asking exactly that. 3 weeks after Beck's speech behind closed doors, Hitler told his commanders what the city was actually for. Danzig, he said, is not the subject of the dispute at all. It is a question of expanding our living space in the East. The rest of those minutes leave no doubt about what that meant. There will be war, Hitler told them. Our task, the record reads, is to isolate Poland and the decision to attack Poland at the first suitable opportunity. A negotiated handover of Danzig was the one outcome Berlin could not afford. That April, the German Foreign Office had quietly instructed its own ambassador in Warsaw not to negotiate over the city at all for fear the Poles might actually agree. The city was not the prize, it was the pretext. Through June and July, the Free City stopped looking free. Weapons came across from East Prussia by night. 4,000 irregulars drilled in the open. 1,000 SS men arrived from the Reich. Tourists, the paperwork said, here for sporting contests. The phrase is from the British consul's own report. While the city armed, the story was being written. From May, German newspapers kept up a drumbeat about Polish terror. Germans beaten, Germans driven out, Danzig strangled by Polish customs men. When a Danzig stormtrooper was shot dead that month in a brawl with a Polish official's driver, the propaganda machine made him a martyr. None of it was accidental. Hitler's instruction for Danzig, as his own officials recorded it, was to keep the pot boiling. In early August, the quarrel turned to something small. Customs. Polish inspectors still worked on Free City territory, and Danzig moved to strip their authority. Warsaw demanded the order be withdrawn. Berlin protested. Poland had no right, it said, to issue ultimatums to Danzig. And Warsaw answered that if Germany intervened again, Poland would treat it as an act of aggression. By then, no one was really arguing about inspectors. On the 11th of August, Hitler had the League's own High Commissioner in Danzig, Karl Burckhardt, flown to his mountain house in Hitler's personal aircraft. Years later, Burckhardt recorded what Hitler told him, that everything he undertook was directed against Russia, and that if the West was too blind to see it, he would be forced to reach an understanding with the Russians first. A memoir written long after, but 2 weeks later, the world would find out what it meant. The key to Poland's survival lay in Moscow. All summer, Britain and France had courted the Soviet Union for an alliance. Their military mission traveled to Russia in August by chartered steamer at 13 knots, nearly a week at sea. And in Moscow, the talks stalled on one question. Would Poland allow the Red Army onto Polish soil? Poland would not. On the 22nd of August, Hitler assembled his commanders again. The objective, he told them, was the destruction of Poland. And for the world, I shall give a propagandist cause for starting the war. Never mind whether it be plausible or not. The next day, his foreign minister flew to Moscow, and Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, enemies in every speech either had ever given, signed a pact. Its full terms were secret. In Danzig, that same day, the local Nazi leader, Albert Forster, proclaimed himself head of state. And so on, the 25th of battles, the battleship. The Schleswig-Holstein moored in Danzig harbor, directly opposite a Polish ammunition depot called the Westerplatte, a garrison of officially 88 men. In reality, about 200. That same day, Britain signed its formal treaty of alliance with Poland, and Hitler, who had ordered the invasion for the next morning, hesitated and called it off. The fuse was lit. It had 6 days left to burn.